little things, operational things. But when it comes to the big things of life, clearly the ego doesn't choose. The ego doesn't choose the person you fall in love with. The ego doesn't choose your desired profession. The ego doesn't choose your sense of meaning.
No, but that's not free will, right? I don't choose whether or not my car is running on some kind of fuel or not, right? Or what kind of fuel it runs on. But I choose what I do with my car, right? I drive it left, drive it right. That's what you're referring to, something that is a potential foundation for starting out having some free will, right? You don't choose if you fall in love with whoever, but you. Another way is saying, I don't choose whether or not I'm attracted to another person, let's say sexually, right? Or some person doesn't choose whether or not they are sexually attracted to another person, but they choose whether or not choose what they do about it or whether they do anything about it, right? They create that choice. Do they act upon the choice? Not necessarily, right? Otherwise, people would probably constantly running around raping each other, right? I don't see that. I have never seen any rape, right? Sort of out in the wild, right? uh, so people are controlling their emotions, no matter where they come from, right? So you're confusing what is meant by free will. You're trying to find, I think, it sounds to me like you're trying to screw around a bit with the understanding so you can sort of get rid of free will, right? Because if there's free will, that means that you would always have had free will throughout your life. And those decisions you made were on you, not some abstract big mind out there, right? That's kind of annoying because that if you're sitting in some kind of fix, then you would have to admit to yourself that it's your own fault, right? At least to some extent, except to the degree that somebody else was screwing around with your situation, right? And you didn't have a moral principle to follow that enabled you to fend off problems that other individuals inflicted on you. Exactly because you didn't have a moral principle, or at least not a functional moral principle. What is usually going on when it comes to morality is that somebody claims an authority on morality, usually parents or teachers or priests, and they inflict that morality on you and make you to conform to that morality without you having done any ethics, right? And then 40 years later, you found out they were just screwing around with me, taking advantage of me, or keeping me in the dark, or something like that, so they could get into a situation that was more beneficial for them. Right? That's usually what morality is being used for, and that's what, once again, why I'm a big proponent of everybody think for yourself, right? Philosophy has to be decentralized completely as it possibly can, right? If there's 8.3 billion people in the world, there are 8.3 billion philosophies. There might be overlappings. There might be cases where they're basically identical, but they're still their personal choice or arrival at that philosophy. So how do you go about, if there are 8.4 billion different philosophies, how do you go about doing your everyday if you don't agree with people? Well, then don't interact with them, right? The ability to say no thank you is possibly the most important ability you can possibly have, right? And that's why things like government is just do as you're told or you will be shot. It's not a good idea, right? What did the 20th century tell you about that, right? I'm going on a bit on a rant here, right? But it's free will is not really important to me, because I'm fine with free will. But the problem is that those who argue against free will are doing it not because they care too much about free will, but it leads them to be able to, remove themselves from responsibility for their own life, right? For their own actions. And then when you come and blame them for something, they're just going to say, well, don't blame me, I don't have free will, right? No, it's just, the big mind acting through me, or something like that, right? That's always what it ends up with, right? So it's the combination of having some kind of harebrained, abstract, area that is the most important and dominant thing compared to your average, sad little, experiential, perceptive, whatever, right? Dissociated, whatever mind there, right? That is just going to be euthanized and sucked dry of objectivity, so that the big subjectivity can get its insights, right? You're just there as a receptacle, as a spy, right? You don't have free will. You're just, being ordered around by the big mind, right? So those who want to get rid of free will, of course, it's because they want to not have any, have any association with the consequences of their actions, right? And they want to envelop you into that, right? And then they're going to say, but those who are not believing in our religion called Analytic Idealism, they're the bad ones, right? Gulags, concentration camps, right? It's, what did COVID show you, right? Those unvaccinated over there, they are the, right? It's just fucking under the surface, right? Totalitarianism is just, and fascism and communism, all this shit, it's just under the surface. When the big masters out there scratch that surface away, all these crazy people pop up and say, these people have to be, they can't have their social welfare if they don't get their injection. And so it's like, holy shit, where did we get from, oh, kumbaya, let's all, hold hands and, over the ocean. And, it's like, and then somebody says, trust the science. And everybody says, you have to do this or you can, rot in the street, right? It's like, holy shit, from one second to the other, it goes crazy, right?
Nothing. So does analytic idealism mean that there is no free will? No. Again, free will, it's a matter of what we identify with. If you identify with the ego, you have very little free will. However...
This is bullshit. This is just polemic bullshit, in my opinion, right? He's talking around the problem. He's not addressing what it's actually dealing with. Free will is a reference to events where people are involved. And without their involvement, that situation could not occur. So they have to will themselves to do specific things that wouldn't occur at that place and that time in the way that is imagined by that or those person involved, right? And the comparison between the imagination and the degree to how it fits with that imagination in that future is the degree to which you have free will, right? It's a matter of definition, I guess, right? And maybe that's one of the problems of free will. People are completely confused about what we're actually talking about, right? And my version might not be right, but that's the version I'm going with, right? Because if you're willing something, you are applying yourself to that representation you have of an outside, so to say, right? You're applying something to the outside based on your experiences inside, right? What is going on out there, you don't know, but you only have the representation of what is going on. Those representations are compared to how you imagine that representation to look at that point in time in the future. And because you could change it in a way that couldn't possibly be changed in any other way, you applied your will to it. And you were free to do so because it matched up at that point in time sufficiently, you could say. It might not be perfect, right? But sufficiently to say, of course, if I didn't do that, it wouldn't be like that. That's enough to me to say I have free will. I can do that, right? If I put my head, or I say now, I will put my hand on my head. In 3 seconds, my hand will be on my head. There it is, right? I have free will. I mean, it isn't more complicated than that. But the will part of it is within me, right? You can't experience my willing. You can only see the effect of it, right? So I can experience my free will, you could say. Experience might not be the right word because I'm actually not experiencing it. It's a classification of this particular kinds of event and compared to what is going on in my mind, right? I'm creating that choice, you could say, as to reference his words, right? The choice was there. I imagined that choice. And the future, which is now the now, right? When I do the actual thing and it has unfolded, then I'm comparing to the memory I had of how it should look, right? And yes, it looks like I imagined it should look. I imagined that pizza and how to do it, and I did it, and it's a pizza. Hooray! Free will, right? It's not more complicated than that. What people try to prove is that by observing the world, I can observe some free will out there. No, you can't. And it's something, it's almost like, Hume's insert gap. You can't experience it. But you have your own free will that you are comparing your imagination to that situation. And that's how you deduce the free will part of it, right? And that at least there's something going on. You might be able to call it something else. I would like to call that free will because that's how I classify it, right? So I don't understand why it's so difficult, this free will thing. It must be because people who argue it away say, but I have to experience some free will out there. But all I see is just causality. I only see, rocks rolling down hills and so on. And it goes, I can't change its course unless, of course, I change its course, right? So it's the problem with free will is possibly a result of trying to fit it around bad metaphysics, right? The metaphysics doesn't allow for it, so I have to argue it away, right? So if you come up with some, and that's why these fundamental things are so fucking important, because you are going to be influenced by your fundamental thinking and what comes next, or that might be free will, then you fit it around the agenda, so to say, right? There's a high risk of doing that sort of confirmation bias, right? So if you run into problems, okay, well, I sense that I have some kind of free will, but my foundational metaphysics doesn't allow for that. Maybe I should go back and check out my metaphysics then, right? Rather than say, no, my metaphysics is perfect, so I have to reject. Careful, right?
If you identify with core subjectivity, with that which remains after you are completely amnesic in a...
Yeah, but nobody has experienced that. And nobody can tell, because when they step out of that chamber, if they are in there, they're no longer in there, right? So now they only have a memory of it, so they now have this kind of, yes, my metaphysics is based on me saying, if this is the case, I have a metaphysics, and it's pure subjectivity that you can only get to if you are not experiencing anything. And then I will also refer to some woman in Germany. There you have it. I've done it. Metaphysics. Hey, and I'm going to tell you about morality, and you don't have free will, and give me a break, right?